the world formed? Where did life begin? Where did humanity come from? And where will it go? These ancient questions leave us perplexed without answers. To find the answers, let's return to the world formation legends of various peoples. Almost all traditional and folk myths from the ancient world speak of the primordial state and the formation of the earth. These stories are incredibly diverse and often reflect the common psychology of the people. An important motif appearing in all ancient cultures from Mexico and Peru to Egypt and Samaria is primordial water. These primordial characteristics are often chaotic, disorderly, and unpredictable. They are consistently described across ancient traditional cultures and are often referred to by modern folk as the cosmic ocean. Instead of arranging motifs and highlighting their superficial similarities, let's seek the common meaning behind the stories to understand primordial water and world formation. In other words, as anthropologist Walter Evans once advised students of mythology in 1911, when studying religion or mythological stories, we should find similarities among them that reveal fundamental connections to unify belief in spiritual systems. But more importantly, we must try to understand why such similarities exist, for example, the common principles behind them. Primordial water and cultures. Appearing in ancient world formation myths, primordial water represents a state of chaos and lack of control. In many such myths, the world-forming actions parallel establishing order for the chaos. Or in other words, dividing those disordered watery substances into later complete forms. The Babylonians have a myth of world formation, the Enuma Elish, that nothing existed at the beginning except the primordial chaotic waters of Apsu and Tiamat, formless and embodying both masculine and feminine traits. The Egyptians called this watery disorder Nun, a state from which the first primordial mounds easily emerged. Hindu mythology of world formation also describes a primordial sea. I am born because this form needs support. In another story, Prajapati is born from a blooming lotus floating on the primordial water. The one who rests on water. Halfway around the world, the indigenous Mixtec people of Mexico also describe the formless, shapeless state of darkness of the beginning. Origin de los Indios. In ancient times, during the primordial era, the world was immersed in darkness, everything was formless, and a water covering formed slimy substances, gradually revealing the earth. Polynesian world formation stories also mention primordial water as the only original substance existing beforehand. Varroa born from a cosmic egg placed on the primordial water. From there, the world formation begins. Primordial gods or other deities typically appear in sequence. This shows natural patterns in world formation cycles divided into stages, maintained by a divine and creative intelligence. In the pyramid texts, Egyptian religious texts from the 5th and 8th dynasties at Saqqara, the god Ra, the sun god and supreme deity, descended and calmed the waters, establishing order in place of chaos. For the Egyptians, order is synonymous with Ma'at, a concept closely related to truth and justice. By conquering the water, Ra established the supreme authority of Ma'at. The chaotic primordial waters, though defeated, stand in opposition to Ma'at. This mythological story serves as a reminder to humans of their constant threat of disorder to the order that the pharaohs protect. Primordial water in creation myths often exhibits a dual. On one hand, it represents a state of conflict, unpredictability and transit. On the other hand, it represents infinite potential as a tool for creation to generate existence. In his 2014 article in the Journal of Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry, researcher Michael R.F. Ruffinaugh described the dual nature of water, the primordial state of the universe, as follows. The primordial and indifferentiated nature of water has the ability to create and but also the capacity to absorb and destroy realities. The incantation to conquer primordial. In myths involving the primordial ocean, incantations are considered crucial divine tools to arrange, govern the water, and initiate the world creation process. Perhaps the most familiar examples of this motif come from the Bible and Islamic theology. In the first book of the Old Testament, the biblical version of the formless and empty primordial waters, God moved over the water's surface. Let there be light. Through this, the process of establishing order for the earth and waters from power began. The Quran states that Allah created every living being from water. To create all things, Allah spoke to the earth and sky, commanding them to come together, whether willingly or unwillingly. In the Babylonian world creation story, Ea recited a powerful incantation, a pure spell, to subdue the fierce primordial waters of Apsu. Daily life of the Egyptian gods. The chief god, though, used the power of incantation to perform the world creation process as follows. I am Thor, master of divine words. I know what is hidden in the inaccessible sky on earth and concealed in the primordial ocean. I am the god who created the sky. Humanity originated from the mountains. I created the gods and the human. Later, the prayers of the Peruvians declared, at the beginning of creation, the incantation was recited, let there be singing for the formation of the world. Let there be earth and heaven, let there be day, let there be beauty. In the 1916 study of ocean mythology, American anthropologist Roland Dixon compared this Peruvian story with the creation myth of the Maori people. Alone dwelling in the vast space, in darkness with water everywhere. No dawn light, no clarity, no light. And at the very beginning, it was decreed, let darkness become a darkness carrying light. And immediately, light appeared. Ancient cultures worldwide regarded the use of incantations as a slow, weak mechanism for creating all things. We cannot list all the incantations. However, examining these mythological examples is enough for us to realize that the Creator always used the power of incantations to establish order for the primordial water. Deeper research reveals that the creative power of incantations has entered the social customs and traditional religious practices of various cultures. From magical chants or utterances in pyramid texts, to the incantations and blessings of epic poetry. This evidence demonstrates a great belief that incantations can continue to change the world and its substance as in the process of world creation. Why water? As we have seen, primordial water represents relatively consistent concepts across ancient cultures and plays an important role. But why is water necessary as the primordial substance for world creation, the fundamental component of the universe? According to Aristotle's Metaphysics, Thales, the Greek philosopher, believed that the fundamental principle is water. He perceived this because he observed that the nourishment of all living things is moist, as well as heat being generated and maintained by that moisture. In the same work, Aristotle provides another interesting observation, linking water to the formation of gods and the world creation process. Some people think that even the ancient ones and the first forms of gods created were of aquatic nature. They created Oceanus and Tethys as the parents of the primordial gods and described the oath of the gods created from water named Styx. The mysterious natural essence of water leads to its use in purification rituals, baptisms, and even harmony with sacred architecture. It is believed that many temples across the Near East were built over natural springs. Some of these springs still flow out from the temples today. These springs represent the primordial water, while the temples above them symbolize the order of the universe and the dwelling of the gods. For example, the Roman historian Tacitus mentioned the Temple of Jerusalem being built over an unfailing spring, while Eusebius wrote that the temple contained a natural gushing spring from within it. The temples of the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar were also built at the mouths of natural springs, showing the goddess's relationship with the waters of life. The temple of Apollo at Nineveh was similarly built to surround the mouth of a spring, giving the temple extraordinary power. Another example comes This practice originates from reverence for primordial water and raises questions about the connections between cultures and cultural diffusion. Indeed, water is seen as the source of life, and it is no surprise that in mythology, it becomes the fundamental material used by the Creator at the moment of world creation. These details share the same meaning, even among cultures separated by half the globe. But the reasons for these similarities remain a hotly debated topic among scientists, ever since comparative mythology emerged as a field and discipline. According to chapters 7 and 8 of the Book of Genesis, the Great Flood occurred as God's punishment for the moral decay of humanity. At one time, humanity had developed a thriving civilization, but their hearts became selfish and wicked with evil schemes. Patiently waiting in vain for humanity to improve, God decided to destroy them with a flood to wipe out the earth. However, one righteous man remained, that was Noah. God said to Noah, "The time has come to completely end this violence and wickedness. I will destroy all living beings, along with the entire world. As for you, Noah, you must build an ark of cypress wood. You shall make rooms in the ark, and coat it with pitch inside and out, so that water cannot enter. The ark has 3 decks, the lower deck, the second deck, and the third deck, and it must be 14 cubits high, 137 cubits long, and 23 cubits wide." Noah listened to what God told him and was astonished. He had never built a boat, as he lived far from the sea and never needed such a thing. Certainly, he had never imagined that one day he would build a boat of such enormous size. But God taught him how to build it. The ark was to be built very sturdily with a strong wooden frame, with a high roof so that water would not flood the deck. And on one side of the ark, there were windows and a single large door for entry and exit. When completed, it looked like a giant cat house, but what was its purpose? Soon after, the answer appeared. God said, God said, the time had come. When God told him to board the ship, he said, Noah boarded the ship with his sons and his wife, as well as the wives of his sons. Pair by pair, birds, animals, and insects, both male and female, followed the human families onto the ship. Then Noah closed the door and waited. After that, a flood suddenly struck, raining continuously for 40 days and nights, and the waters rose for 157 days. The water covered the entire earth, rising over even the highest mountain peaks, destroying all living beings. And these things do not exist only in legends. Excavations in the Mesopotamia region uncovered many traces, such as mud sediment layers or fossils related to the Great Flood. In 1959, Lihan Durupinet in the Turkish military accidentally discovered a strangely shaped object while viewing aerial photographs. He sent the photos to the University of Ohio in America. After thoroughly researching and analyzing the submitted photos, Dr. Brandenberger concluded that the strange object was indeed a ship. In 1977, Ron Villard visited the site where the strange object in Lihan Durupinet's photo was discovered. With permission from the local authorities, Ron Villard and others studied the area using metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar. The results were entirely worth the effort they put in and caused a sensation in Turkey at the time. The strange object was identified as an ancient ship. It was a very large prehistoric ship located on a mountain peak 2,000 meters above sea level. An even more surprising thing was through analysis, proof, and comparison. Scientists suspected it was the famous ship of Noah. On June 20, 1987, the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior, archaeological agencies, and researchers from Ataturk University recognized the discovery of the Ron Villard expedition team. The ship-shaped object on the mountain at 2,000 meters above sea level was confirmed to be an ancient ship. The area later became a national park and a treasure of Turkey. This can be considered one of the greatest historical and archaeological discoveries, proving that the Great Flood in the past was real. Along with that, descriptions of the Great Flood were recorded on Sumerian clay tablets. Legends of the Maya in Central America, stories of the Lusca people in Colombia. Babylonian legends, Indian fairy tales and epics. It is summarized that there are about 50 myths and legends about the Great Flood. All are very detailed, clear, coherent, and share a common motif. When morality declines, disaster strikes, and only the good survive. Two geologists, William Ryan and Walter Pittman from Columbia University, studied a great flood that occurred about 7,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence shows a sediment layer between soil layers in present-day Iraq. Dating back about 2,900 years, is the trace of a major flood. In 1922, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley began excavating the Mesopotamian desert area between Baghdad and the Persian Gulf. Discovered the ruins of the city of Ur of the ancient Sumerian kingdom and the royal tombs within this city. Sumer was an ancient civilization in southern Mesopotamia, in the Middle East. Sumerian civilization emerged around 2900 BCE. In the Iraqi desert area, many Sumerian cuneiform-inscribed clay tablets were found, recording the myths and legends of the Mesopotamia region. Prominent among them is the story of a great flood that occurred in ancient times. Accordingly, the Epic of Gilgamesh was found on an Assyrian stele, a civilization that emerged around 2500 BCE. The Assyrian story also describes terrible plagues and a great flood that occurred. The god protecting humans was the god Ea, who instructed Utnapishtim on how to escape. 6 days after the Great Flood began, the water gradually receded. Utnapishtim released a bird to test, but it could not fly far. After that, he released a swallow, but there was no better result. Finally, a raven was released and flew away, signaling to Utnapishtim that the water had receded. He went outside and performed a ritual offering to the deities. This story is identical to what is recorded in the Bible about Noah. After the rain lasting 40 days and nights, the Great Flood lasted 157 days. When the floodwaters began to recede, Noah's Ark got stuck on Mount Ararat. Noah opened a window and released a raven to check if the water had receded. The raven only flew back and forth without daring to land. Next time, Noah released a dove, but it couldn't find anywhere to perch, so it had to fly back. Noah released the dove again. When flying back, the dove carried an olive branch in its beak. Noah waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time, it did not return. Noah opened the ark's door, stepped outside, and saw that the ground had dried. He gave thanks to God and received his divine manifestation. Surprisingly, similar stories have been found in Mesopotamia, some dating back nearly 5,000 years. This shows a shared belief in the Great Flood and an astonishing similarity to the story of Noah. Or Atrahasis or Unapishtim. Indeed, this story has been widely spread over thousands of years. Many literary and geographical works also mention the power of God manifested through Moses. Moses was a leader, prophet, and lawgiver according to the Catholic Bible. He was called by God to lead the Jewish people out of Egyptian slavery. According to the Bible, Moses was the son of a Jewish woman. While Pharaoh ordered the killing of Jewish baby boys, Moses was adopted and became a member of the Egyptian royalty. When he grew up, he was called by God to carry out the mission of liberating the Jewish people from slavery, crossing the Red Sea, entering the desert, and returning to the Promised Land. During the journey, Moses borrowed God's power to perform many miracles. One of them was parting the sea in two, allowing the people to walk through the seabed to the other shore. When they reached the shore, the Egyptian army caught up, and he raised his hand over the sea, closing the wall of water to drown the entire army. These miracles usually only exist in the fictional world. But strangely, previously, oceanographers found many chariots, horse bones, and human bones under the Red Sea. One of the fossil remains found at the crossing site was analyzed by the osteology department of Stockholm University, and confirmed to be the right femur of a man about 1.65 meters to 1.70 meters tall. Therefore, there is a hypothesis that these are traces of ancient people crossing the sea by land, or possibly the Pharaoh's army drowning while pursuing the Jews. Under scientific scrutiny, Dr. Parker at the American Oceanographic Center also sought to explain this legend. He believed that the unique tidal regime, along with Moses' astronomical geographical knowledge, was key to this bold plan. Additionally, this story is the subject of many epic films. The Ten Commandments. Scientific explanation. Exodus, Gods and Kings. Accordingly, Scott explained the sea parting as being caused by an earthquake triggering a tsunami. And before a tsunami hits, the sea often recedes far, exposing the shallow seabed before the big wave surges in. However, this explanation has one problem. The time of water receding before a tsunami is only about 10 to 15 minutes, too short for all the Jews to cross the temporary seabed. Moreover, Moses couldn't have known in advance about the impending earthquake and tsunami, unless God informed him. Exodus, Gods and Kings. However, scientists have various natural explanations for the formation of a temporary path under the Red Sea. Accordingly, the key point, as Dr. Parker mentioned, is the tide, a natural phenomenon that Moses calculated to coordinate with his bold plan. With this, he could completely predict when the path would appear. In fact, there are many places in the world where the tide recedes to its lowest, exposing a strip of land on the shallow seabed, forming a path for a few hours. And then, when the tide rises, the path quickly disappears. In 1798, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte and his troops crossed the Gulf of Suez on horseback. In the northern Red Sea, the Sinai Peninsula divides this sea into two branches, forming the Gulf of Suez to the west and the Gulf of Aqaba to the east. This is also believed to be the location where Moses and his people crossed the Red Sea. Here, where the tide is low, a shallow strip of land about 1.6 kilometers long is exposed on the seabed. But then, the tide suddenly rose, causing many of Napoleon's soldiers to perish. According to the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, the Jews stopped twice before crossing the sea. The last time was on the western shore of the Gulf of Suez. At that time, Pharaoh's pursuing forces were closing in. The dust cloud from the chariots could be seen from afar. This was another important sign for Moses, helping him estimate when the Egyptian army would catch up to the coast. Moreover, Moses had lived near the wilderness for a long time. Therefore, he knew which point along the coast to choose so that the people could cross the Red Sea when the tide was low. He had knowledge of astronomy, observed the night sky, and used ancient methods. He could predict tidal activity based on the position and fullness of the moon. In contrast, Pharaoh and his advisors lived along the Nile, connected to the Mediterranean, where the tidal range is very low, only about a few centimeters. Thus, Pharaoh's army had little understanding of tides and were unaware of the danger ahead. Predicting when the tide would recede, how long the seabed strip would appear and last, and when it would suddenly disappear. Moses could fully plan to help the Jewish people escape. Therefore, he chose the full moon day to cross the sea because at that time, the period between high and low tide is the longest, giving the people more time to cross. At the same time, this is also when the low tide is lower than usual and the high tide is higher, suitable for drowning Pharaoh's army. Determining the timing of reconnaissance was a key factor for the plan to proceed perfectly. Moses had to calculate so that the last Jew would just cross the seabed strip when the tide rose immediately. At that point, the Egyptian pursuers were close behind and fell into the prepared trap. If the cavalry and chariots caught up before the tide rose, Moses had prepared some delaying measures. Conversely, if the pursuers arrived after the tide rose, many people had already crossed safely, and Moses could have some return to the seabed to lure the pursuers, ensuring the enemy's destruction. However, the Bible also mentions another decisive factor. Strong winds from the east blew all night and pushed the water to both sides. Ocean physicists say that wind blowing over shallow waters often carries more water than over deep waters. Therefore, this sudden strong wind blowing all night would help lower the water level further, increasing the success chances of Moses' plan. For centuries, people believed that the appearance of this wind was due to divine intervention to help the people. However, it is unclear whether Moses knew in advance the advantage the wind would bring, but he certainly considered tide prediction as the decisive factor. When Napoleon and his soldiers almost all perished in 1798 at the northern end of the Gulf of Suez, the water level at low tide was about 1.5 to 1.8 meters or up to 2.7 to 3 meters if the wind blew in the right direction. Time was higher than during Napoleon. And if this is true, then the rising tide could completely drown the Egyptian army as described in the Bible. If the entire progression of Moses' plan unfolded as per the above hypotheses, he truly deserves to be considered the greatest tide predictor in history, not merely a miracle from God. Perhaps God created the strong wind blowing all night to perfect the plan. But according to evidence, Most of the plan was devised by Moses based on his profound knowledge and experience. The power of the sea, tsunamis, storms, rogue waves, and the mission to predict disasters.